All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor, our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tav Shin Pei Hey, the Tilson family of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shur Midrashos this month as a schus for Besaras Tavos for Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tishrei, Dr. Linda Weinberg, in loving memory of her husband, Paul Weinberg, parents Moshe ben Avram David, Avram and Shindi Kelman. In memory of their parents, Jerome and Bernice Kelman, and Alexander and Frederica David. Our week of learning sponsors, Jonathan and Ilana Austin of Eretz Yisrael, as a token of Akar Satov to his brother-in-law Avi Tabayish, introducing him to a shir, and with brachas for continued hatzlacha for all of us as we learn, steig, and grow together each and every day. Greg and Rachel Levitan, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Greg's mother, Esther Levitan, Esther Bas Herschel, and Tzvi and Shane Dishir, in the schus refuah shlema for Tinok ben Miriam. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. All of the Neshama should have an aliyah, the families in Nechama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring our hostages home to their families, B'Shalom and Mekarav, and our holy soldiers should be successful b'chol ma'aseh yadehem. And of course, last sponsorship, Klal Yisrael sponsorship in honor of Yoni Frager's 41st birthday. Mazel Tov, on behalf of the entire Jewish people, we wish Yoni an incredible, incredible happy birthday with a year filled with Mazel, Bracha, Simcha, and Hatzlacha. Shkoyach. It's Yoni and the Lubavitcher Rebbe who get their birthdays celebrated by Klal Yisrael. So let's. I'm sorry. No time. That is true. All right, so with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. But the truth is, the Gemara moves quickly. I don't move quickly. That's the issue. All right. So today's daf is Kuf Yud Beis. Yeah, today's daf is Kuf Yud Beis 112. We left off on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel. So it is 2, 4, 6, 7 lines out from the bottom. Last two words line Rabbi Shmuel. So let's just reorient ourselves a little bit. I have a little bit of halacha l'maisa also to go back to, but just to close out the sugyas from yesterday. But first, we'll finish up today's daf. So remember again, the last section that we began was the concept of a husband inheriting his wife, and where do we know that concept from? So Rabbi Akiva, so we had a whole first drasha, and then Rabbi Akiva came along and brought from a different drasha. Rabbi Akiva says v'yarish osa from that phrase. Rabbi Shmuel comes along and says, Rabbi Shmuel Amar Eino Tzarech. Now both say so again. Rabbi Shmuel is espousing his source for how we know that a husband inherits his wife. So Rabbi Shmuel Omer Eino Tzarech. You don't need all of these drashas. Now I both say now it's interesting. So you would think that Rabbi Shmuel is going to give like a much shorter drasha. Rabbi Shmuel probably gives the longest drasha on the entire daf. So watch this, but it's quite fascinating. It opens the doors to a number of different things. So Hari Omer, v'chol bas yoreshes nachala mimatos b'nei Yisrael lecha mimishpachos. So both says, remember again, this we keep coming back to this pasuk that if a woman inherits property, if a daughter inherits property. Now remember again, we've now become sensitive to the wording of this pasuk. If a daughter will inherit property, mimatos b'nei Yisrael. Now what did we see from matos? Matos means she's inheriting from two tribes, which means again she's inheriting from her mother, she's inheriting from her father, which is possible how? How could she be inheriting from her mother or father? She's the sole inheritor from both her mother and her father's side. Okay. So she goes ahead and she inherits property. So then the Torah says she should marry into her father's family. In other words, what that means is she should marry a member of her father's tribe, so that this way again the tribal property does not go ahead and shift from tribe to tribe. So Gemara says as follows. Now, why does the Torah say that this woman should marry within her father's tribe? Because the Torah is concerned that if she does not marry into her father's tribe, and let's say her husband is from a different tribe, her husband is going to inherit her, right? And the property then is going to move to the husband's tribe. So what do you see from here? What you see from here is that halacha l'maisa, a husband inherits his wife. In other words, it's an interesting drasha. From the fact that the Torah is telling this woman, you should marry into your father's tribe, because we're concerned, otherwise if you marry a man from a different tribe and you predecease your husband will inherit you. Take your inherited tribal property to his tribe. So from here you see that a husband inherits his wife. Okay, but that's what it means. Ba'asavas habal hakasav medaber. The Torah is talking about over here that a husband, literally again, hasavas means to move property, that the husband will move the wife's property to his tribe. So furthermore, the pasuk says, "V'lo tisov nachalo l'bnei Yisrael mimata el mata." The pasuk says, "Don't move property from one tribe to another tribe." Furthermore, the pasuk says, "V'lo sisov nachalo mimata lamata." Another pasuk, "Do not go ahead and move property from one tribe to another tribe." Va'omer, and the pasuk says we're going to define all of these different pieces of Omer. Ve'elazar ben Aaron meis, vayikberu osa begivas Pinchas bino. So we'll say the pasuk says that Elazar, the son of Aaron, died. So we'll say this is in Sefer Yoshua. Elazar was the Kohen Gadol, right? After Aaron died, so Elazar dies, and where is Elazar buried? He's buried in the Giva, in the valley, owned by Pinchas, his son. So this is interesting. So we'll say by Pinchas, his son, v'chimi nayin lePinchas shelo hayelo leElazar. Now Pinchas is Elazar's son. Where does Pinchas have property that didn't belong to his father? In other words, remember, they're Kohanim. So Shevet Levi doesn't have an Achla. So where exactly does Pinchas have? It sounds like Elazar is being buried in property that did not belong to Pinchas. That did not belong to Elazar, belonged to Pinchas. So where did Pinchas have property from that didn't belong to his father? Rather, so what happened? Shenasa Pinchas Isha Umeisa V'Yarsha. So Pinchas was married, his wife died, and he inherited his wife. So I'll say, so remember, just look what's happening over here. So all Rabbi Shmuel is doing over and over and over is painting a picture that a husband goes ahead and inherits his wife. Now again, Rabbi Shmuel's primary proof is from that passage we keep on referencing, V'cholbas yoreshes nachal mimatos b'nei Yisrael le'echam mishpachas Levi. So a woman who inherits property should marry into her father's tribe. Why? Because we're concerned that if she does marry into her father's tribe, she marries a man from another tribe, and she predeceases that man will inherit her and move the tribal property over to his tribe. So what do you see from here? That a husband inherits his wife. That's the primary proof, and then again, everything else is building on that. So the Gemara says, Omer, furthermore it says, Usguv holid es Yair. So Skuv had a child, Yair. Vayhilo esrim v'shalosh arim ba'aretz HaGilad. And Yair had 31 cities in the Gilad. Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. So the Rashbam says, actually, we don't have to go to the Rashbam. Top of Kuf Yud Beis 112a. V'chiminayin liYair shelo hayelo l'skuf. So same question. What's interesting about this is the following. That halacha l'maisa, remember again, in a system of tribal property, so we would assume that whatever property the son has came to him from the father. So here's what's interesting, right? So the Navi sets up for us a lineage. There's a guy named Skuv, right? Not a popular name anymore, right? But Skuv has a son, Yair, right? Yair has 31 cities in the Gilad. Now, what's interesting is we would have thought that where do Yair's properties come from? Where do they come from? His father. Yet it's interesting that son has properties that his father didn't have. So the Gemara says, top of Kuf Yud Beis, so where did Yair have property that his father didn't have? Malamet shenasa Yair Isha. So at least the narrative that Rabbi Shmuel is constructing is that it must have been that Yair got married, right? Yair got married, and his wife died. She predeceased him. He inherited his wife, and this represented her property. So all of this painting this same picture that when a wife passes away, a husband inherits her. Okay, so we'll say, so now we're going to unravel this drasha a little bit. So a multi-layered drasha, all really cementing this basic fact that a husband inherits his wife. Beautiful. And we'll say now, again, I just want to point out, I think I said this yesterday, this is one of these discussions where there's no disagreement about the conclusion. In other words, everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, a husband inherits his wife. That's not the shaila. The shaila is what's the mucker for it, right? What's the source? So here we go. So Ma'ava Omer. So we'll say, here's what's interesting, right? If you look at Rabbi Shmuel's drasha, so Rabbi Shmuel quotes the pasuk. So first he quotes the pasuk from the Torah. V'chol bas yoreshes nachal mimatos b'nei Yisrael, right? A woman inherits property. Then Torah says what? She has to marry into her father's tribe. So what do you see from here? Because what are we concerned about? If she marries a man who's not from her father's tribe, and she predeceases that man, so that man is going to take her tribal property. So from here you see that a husband inherits his wife. And then Rabbi Shmuel goes on and he says, Va'omer. Va'omer. So whenever you see that, what that automatically means is as follows: that whoever is espousing the proof felt that the initial part of the proof, you could ask questions on it, and therefore brings in subsequent pieces to answer subsequent questions. So now the problem is Rabbi Shmuel didn't articulate what the unasked question was, obviously. So now we're going to reconstruct it. So my va'omer, what does mean va'omer? So watch this. This is fascinating. B'sivas haben ka'kapet krah. Maybe not. You see, maybe the Torah is not worried about the husband moving property. Maybe what the Torah is worried about is the son moving property. Now let's play this out, right? So we'll call her Rachel, right? So Rachel inherits property from her father or mother, doesn't really matter, right? She inherits property. So let's call it father. So now what does the Torah say? The Torah says, Rachel, you need to marry someone from your father's tribe. Okay, so now Rabbi Shmuel said, we assumed, why is that? Because we're consumed that if Rachel marries, so let's say Rachel's father was from Shevet Ruvain, right? So now we tell Rachel, you need to marry someone from Shevet Ruvain. What are we concerned about? Because if Rachel marries Shimon from Shevet Shimon, then what's going to happen? If she dies, he's going to go ahead and inherit her and move her property from Shevet Ruvain to Shevet Shimon. Well, maybe not. Maybe we're not worried about the husband, but rather what are we worried about? We're worried that if Rachel marries Shimon from Shevet Shimon, and they have a son, and then Rachel dies, her son will inherit her. Now, the concern is the same, right? The concern is the same, which is moving tribal property from its tribe of origin to a new tribe, right? So the concern is the same, but rather, maybe there's no proof here that a husband inherits. That's the point the Gemara is making over here. In other words, we could just as easily say maybe a husband doesn't inherit. And the concern over here is that a son is going to inherit, and if the son is from a different tribe, it moves the property. So again, interestingly enough, the remedy is the same. What's the remedy? Marry, right? We tell the woman, marry into your father's tribe. This way, any kids you have from your husband will be of the same tribe. But as opposed to before, where we thought the issue was husband was going to inherit her, maybe not. Maybe husband doesn't inherit his wife at all. And maybe the concern over here is the son inheriting the mother. And if the son is of a different tribe, it moves the property. Therefore, we tell the woman, marry into the tribe of your father. That way, any sons you have will inherit within the same tribe. Maybe a husband doesn't inherit at all. So Tashma. So therefore, I will say, then again, this now you understand the whole list of psukim that Rabbi Shmuel brings. Therefore, again, we bring another pasuk. Pasuk says, do not move property from one tribe to another tribe, which teaches us again. Now, Rabbi Shmuel says that teaches us that how does property move from one tribe to another tribe? Marriage, specifically, if a woman owns the property, then predeceases her husband, that allows her property to move. Maybe not. Maybe the second pasuk is just coming to teach me that if she marries into another tribe, she is in violation of both a lav and the positive commandment. Tashma lo tisav nachala mimata lemata acher. Therefore, there's another pasuk, and the pasuk says, do not move tribal property from one tribe to another tribe. Maybe the extra pasuk is just coming to add on the prohibitions. So now again, they'll be in violation of two lav and two prohibitions, and I say, Tashma, therefore goes the pasuk from Yosef or Yoshua. Elazar ben Aaron died, and he was buried in the property of his son Pinchas. Remember again, the Gemara asked, where does Pinchas have property from that his father didn't own? And what's the answer? Pinchas got married, his wife predeceased him, and he inherited her property. The Gemara says, Elazar hu denasiv isisa umeisa v'yarsa Pinchas. Maybe not. Maybe the property came like this. Maybe it was Elazar who married. Obviously, Elazar married, right? Elazar's wife died, and maybe Pinchas inherited that property. Right? In other words, maybe it's not property. In other words, we all agree, obviously, there's got to be a construct over here where Pinchas, the son, owns property that his father did not own. We assumed, or Rabbi Shmuel set it up as a case of where Pinchas was married, his wife predeceased him, he inherited her. Maybe not. Maybe Elazar's father was married, wife predeceased Elazar, right? And then Pinchas, the son, inherited the wife, his mother. Tashma uskuv holides Yair. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel brings the next piece. Remember again, Skuv had a son Yair. Yair had 31 cities in the Gilad that his father did not have. We assume that's because Yair was married to a woman. She predeceased him and he inherited her. V'chitema hasam nami hachihu. Right? Maybe you'll say the same thing over here. That maybe, again, same case. There are same thing as we said by Elazar and Pinchas. Maybe Skuv was married. Skuv was married. His wife died, and maybe Skuv's son Yair inherited his mother. That's how Yair got all of this additional property. But it's no proof that a husband inherits his wife. Im kain trei krai lamali. If that's the case, why do I need two psukim highlighting the same dynamic? So therefore, again, the point over here is now you understand the multiple layers of Rabbi Shmuel's drasha. Because the truth is, on each stage of the drasha, there was a particular question that one could have asked. Therefore, again, he layers it in order to be able to potentially at least try to preempt all of the questions. How do you know all of this? The Gemara says, let's take a step back. Mimai, dilmali olam emelacha, bal lo yaris. Now again, so Rav Papa says Tabaye, maybe a husband does not inherit his wife. In other words, we're presupposing, the Gemara is operating under the assumption, which makes sense because the Mishnah said that the husband inherits his wife. So it comes along, Rav Papa says Tabaye, maybe not. Maybe a husband doesn't inherit his wife. And therefore, again, but what about all these psukim? The Gemara says, no problem. Ukrai besibas haben kiddushaninan. Right, so we'll say, and again, maybe all of these psukim that talk about the concern of transferring tribal property, maybe that's not through marriage, but rather what is it through? It's through children. So again, I will say, I want to point out, the result is the same. The result will still be that if a woman inherits property, we're going to tell her, marry into the tribe of your father. This way, again, the property remains in the same tribe. But not because we're concerned about the husband inheriting her, but rather why? Husband doesn't inherit, but who does inherit? The children. So we want to make sure that the children are of the same tribe of the origin of this property. That the children, essentially, the children are part of the same tribe as the grandfather. That ensures that ultimately all property remains in the tribe. So the Gemara says, "Kiddushin v'Yair dizabin mizban." So we'll say maybe Yair. So you'll ask, how did Yair? Remember in Sefer Yoshua, how did Yair? Sorry, Direi Yamim. And yet, how did Yair get these 31 cities in the Gilad that his father did not own? It's very simple. How did Yair get it? Tizab and Mizban, right? He bought it. So the Gemara says, Pinchas nami, Tizab and Mizban. Maybe Pinchas also. In other words, we'll say, here's what's fascinating about this, right? Isn't this like the reflexive answer? So the Gemara is so troubled by, how did kids have property that wasn't owned by their parents? So let's say, I think it's, I don't know, like, didn't they just buy it? So you see, interestingly enough, that apparently that's not the Gemara's default setting when it comes to real estate, right? The way it worked with land is land was ancestral. Land was ancestral. So the pashtos, right, the land that a adult child had was the land that he inherited from his father, from his parents. So interesting, the Gemara said, well, maybe not. Maybe in these particular cases, so where did Yair have 31 cities that his father Skuv didn't have? He bought it? Where did Pinchas? Now this is interesting. Now Pinchas. Now remember, let's go back to Pinchas in just a second. Elazar, the Kohen Gadol, dies, and where is he buried? He's buried in a piece of property that Pinchas owned. So maybe Pinchas also purchased the property. Pinchas Nabi Dezab and Mizban. That can't be. I'll tell you. It's fascinating. The Gemara says, why not? Why not? So the Gemara says, Amalei. Pinchas Tezabin Mizbah Lo Masas Amrit. No. You can't give the answer that Pinchas bought the property. Why not? Dim came Nimtzas Sadik Chozeres Biyovel V'Nimtzat Sadik Kavar Bekivro She'eno Shalo. Wow. See, Rabbi say, what is the halacha of bought property? What's the halacha of bought property? The halacha of bought property is that it essentially is returned to Yovel, which means the way it works in halacha, Rabbi say, is that bought property that you sell in Eretz Yisrael is essentially a long-term lease. Right? You have a lot of chavra on Zoom in Eretz Yisrael. I think that's still the way it works. At least in Yerushalayim, I don't know that you own anything, but Lamais, I think it's all like long-term, technical long-term lease. In any event, so the idea over here is, here's the problem. Land goes back to its original owner by Yovel. So watch this. If Pinchas bought the property, that means comes Yovel, that property is going back to its original owner, which then means, can you imagine this? So Pinchas is burying his father on property that he purchased, which means now in Yovel, that property is going to go back to its original owner. So it turns out that the burial place of Elazar, the Kohen Gadol, is going to be on someone else's property. That's terrible. In other words, obviously, again, it's going to be Jewish property, but Lamaisa, the Gemara says, could it be v'nimtza tzadik cover bekever she'eno shelo? The tzadik will be buried in a burial plot that's not even his. That's not even his. So I will say, by the way, it's actually interesting. There's a tremendous Musar Haskell in that line also. You can read it almost as a declarative statement. V'nimtza tzadik cover bekever she'eno shelo. When you die and you leave this world, you own absolutely nothing. You don't even own the grave that you're buried in. The mace doesn't, in other words, the family may own it, right? The living may own it. The dead own nothing. The dead own nothing. Even the place. Now again, it's constant halacha of mace tafas arba amos. But from an ownership, from like a titular perspective, when you die, you own absolutely nothing. And I will say, except the one thing you do own is the Torah, the mitzvos, and the ruchnius that you occur. And I will say, such a tremendous line. Nimtza tzadik cover bekever she'eno shalo. Even the greatest of tzaddikim understand, when the tzaddik is there in the ground, the tzaddik doesn't own that kever. He doesn't own that ground because the tzaddik can't, someone who's dead cannot own anything. I will say, I mentioned this before, great Bernie Kraft, they would tell me a great line, said the hearse doesn't have a luggage rack. Right? And I would say it's such an incredible yisod. We spend our lives amassing things. And again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us in the world to enjoy the world. There's nothing wrong. It's good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for us to enjoy. And so we should enjoy the Gashmius. As long as we recognize that any of that Gashmius has to fuel Ruchnius. If the Gashmius doesn't fuel Ruchnius, then it's a bracha levatala and it's hedonistic. If I could show how every piece of Gashmius that I have somehow translates into some type of Ruchni development, beautiful. Fantastic. Mission accomplished. Otherwise, it's a shtickle exercise in futility, and we spend our lives amassing all of these things, and then at the end of the day, after 120, I don't even own the plot of land that I am buried in. The only thing I own for all eternity is the Ruchnias I amass. A new year ahead of us, and I will say this has to be our mantra. Let's work on acquiring the things that we really earn, that we really own for all eternity. I have to work for the other stuff as well, but it's a shaila of what you assign primacy to. Incredible. So the idea over here is, you can't tell me that Pinchas bought land, because if Pinchas bought land, that means he buried his father essentially on land that's going back to its original owner on Yovel. That'd be terrible. So it's different. Remember, Pinchas is a Kohen. So remember again, Kohanim do get property through Cherem vows. Cherem, all right? If somebody says, Cherem, my property, or my property is Cherem to the Mikdash, that gives it over to the base of Mikdash, and that ultimately becomes the property of the Kohanim. So Kohanim do have a mechanism of acquiring property, even not through sale, and by Cherem, that property does not revert back to its original owner, that remains the property of the Kohanim. Okay, Amr Abaye. So let's say now, here's what's interesting. So therefore the Gemara just points out over here, you don't necessarily have a definitive proof that halacha l'maisa, husband inherits his wife. That's all the Gemara is just saying, is that l'maisa you could interpret these psukim in multiple different ways. So the Gemara listens to this. Amar Abaye, sof hakamis akre nachla mishvata di'ima l'shvata da'aba. So I'll say this is very interesting. So it's very interesting. Now, let's analyze this for just a moment, right? Our whole concern over here, right? What's fueling this whole conversation? What's fueling this whole conversation is this concern that when a woman inherits, if she marries outside of her tribe, she is going to go ahead and move property from the tribe of origin to the tribe that she's married to. So I'll say, but remember, let's analyze this for just a moment, right? The moment Abaye says, at the end of the day, the moment that she, let's lay this out, right? So remember, the Torah is talking about inheritance of two different tribal properties, right? Because matos, plural, inheritance of her mother's property and her father's property. The moment she inherits her mother's property, I will say, what's happened? The property has already been dislodged from its shevet of origin, right? Why? Because we're presupposing over here, that the mother, right? So again, let's just give names over here, right? So there's Sarah is the mother, right? So Sarah is the mother. Sarah was married to Avram. Sarah has a daughter, Rachel. So now what happens? Sarah has property. Sarah dies, and her property goes to Rachel. So we're presupposing that and now remember, Avram's from whatever tribe he's from. Sarah hails from whatever tribe she is from. When Rachel inherits the property from her mother, by dint of her inheriting it, the property has been dislodged from its tribe of origin, even before she marries anyone, just by dint of the inheritance. So that's Abai sof hakamis akra nachla mishifta di'im l'shifta da'aba. So by definition, the property has been dislodged from the beginning. So the Gemara says, umimai dilma shani hasam shekvar hosba. Maybe we don't worry about that, because that just kind of is a de facto reality. No, we don't say we do not subscribe to that idea. Listen to this. If you say, look, that almost to a certain degree in the laws of inheritance is like a sunk cost. Like what are you going to do about that? That's just a de facto reality. Then ultimately, again, then you can set up the pasuk talking about the concern both of the son transferring the property and the husband transferring the property. But if you say that lemaisa again, we don't say, we're not going to worry about it since it's already a de facto reality that the property has moved to tribes. Listen to this. I suppose that this is about to get crazy. Watch this. So now, let's imagine the following situation. Let's imagine Rachel has now inherited from both of her parents, Avraham and Sarah. Let's make it even better. Avraham and Sarah from different tribes. So now let's say Avram is from Shevet Ruvain and Sarah is from Shevet Shimon. So now Rachel, the daughter, owns property both linked to Ruvain and Shimon. So what does the Torah tell Rachel? Who should she marry? Someone from Shevet Ruvain, her father's tribe. So whoa, how could she do that? If she marries someone from Shevet Ruvain, then what is she doing? She's dislodging Shevet Shimon property. So how does that, in other words, the whole point the Gemara was making over here was, because remember, all these drushes are tied to each other. The fact that it says matos, remember again, that was the proof we used yesterday to show that that a daughter inherits her mother. So a daughter inherits her mother. So now, and remember we made the Kavachomer that if the daughter inherits her mother, the son inherits the mother. So now you have Rachel. Rachel quite potentially owns property that she inherited from her father Avram, who's from Shevet Ruvain, her mother Sarah, who's from Shevet Shimon. And the Torah says, Rachel, you better marry within your father's tribe so as not to cause the dislodging of tribal property. But one second, if she marries within her father's tribe of Ruvain, she's dislodging her mother's tribal property of Shimon. So what do you do over here? To which the Gemara says, no, we have an answer. Get ready for this. Okay, here's the answer. Rachel has to find a shidduch. Rachel has to find a suitable marriage partner where her husband shares the same tribal affiliations. So when Rachel is introduced to a chassan, the first question they ask, right, the shadchan asks is your father from Ruvain and your mother from Shimon? They both say, you want to talk about amplifying the shidduch crisis, right? So now it's literally the only way a shidduch works for Rachel is if there could be like a lateral move of property. Now both say, now we're going to see, it actually doesn't really fully help. That's the honest truth, because remember, let's just read it. So he says, so Rachel's going to have to marry a man whose father has the same tribal affiliation as Rachel's father, and the imam mishifta the imam, and the chassan's mother has the same tribal affiliation as Rachel's mother. Okay, that's nice. It's nice. Ihachi. So the Gemara says, Ihachi, Hai le'echad mi mishpachas mata avia v'ima mi bayalei. Well, 1 second. Okay, so we'll say, so now, let's take a step back over for just a second. So remember again, the pasuk that we're talking about over here, right? The pasuk that we're referring to is v'chabasio reshes nachala mimatos b'nei Yisrael. Right. So if a woman will inherit property, now again it says mimatos b'nei Yisrael. Matos is what? Plural, which means she's inheriting from two tribes. Who are the two tribes that she's inheriting from? Who's she inheriting from? Mother and father, right? Mother and father, for father and mother from two different tribes, so she's inheriting both. So what does the pasuk say regarding this young woman? So the rest of the pasuk is le'echad mimishpachas mate avia tia liisha. So to a member of her father's tribe, she should marry. So the Gemara says, well, one second. If you're setting up the pasuk of a young woman who's inheriting tribal property from her mother and her father, her father is from Reuven, and her father is from Reuven, and her mother is from Shimon. So now you're saying she has to marry a young man whose father is from Reuven and whose mother is from Shimon. The pasuk should say that. So, because the pasuk right now just says le'echad b'mishpachas mate aviha tiel isha, but now the Gemara says it should say le'echad b'mishpachas mate avia v'ima. It should say, it should say this. It should say she has to marry someone from, right, who shares the same tribal affiliations as her mother and her father. So she has to be read a shidduch to a young man whose father comes from Reuven and whose mother comes from Shimon. And that's the only person she can marry, because this way, again, the tribal affiliations remain the same. I just want to point out, do the tribal affiliations actually remain the same? Not really, because remember again, her husband is from what shevet? It's going to be from what shevet? Reuven, which means if she predeceases him, where is all that property going? Where is it going? Right, it's going to Reuven. But at least conceptually, what it does is it maintains some level of, we'll call it tribal genealogical symmetry, right? So that's what it does. Halachically, it may not, down the road, it may or may not make a difference, but at least again, symmetrically, tribally, genealogically, symmetrically, it lines things up a little bit. Okay, so why doesn't the pasuk say it? I'll tell you why. If would have said that, hava amina filu ipcha. So I said it's interesting. So, because had it mentioned both father and mother, I would have thought like this. I would have thought, really all I need her husband to have is what? Affiliations to both Reuven and Shimon. But it doesn't matter if the chassan's, right, we're saying the chassan, right, Rachel's getting married, so she found the chassan. So it doesn't matter if the chassan's father's from Reuven or from Shimon, the mother's from Reuven and Shimon, as long as it's a blended family, right? That's what we need over here. We need a blended family over here. So we need both representation from Reuven and Shimon. Maybe it doesn't matter who's who. So I'll say, so therefore, kamash shmola, no. It does matter. Right? Well, what does it matter? In other words, the father has to be from Reuven. In other words, so the Gemara is not rejecting the suggestion, right? The suggestion is a good one, which is that if Rachel is inheriting from her parents Avram and Sarah, and Avram was from Reuven and Sarah was from Shimon, so now Rachel now is in possession of tribal properties both from Reuven and Shimon, that Rachel should have to marry a young man also who has parents, a father from Reuven and a mother from Shimon. Okay, so why doesn't the pasuk say it? Because had the pasuk said it, you would have thought that as long as the chassan has familial, right, he has grandparents from Reuven and Shimon, it doesn't matter which side. Kamashmo, the pasuk says it doesn't matter which side. That what we need to happen over here is from Rachel's paternal level, from Rachel's paternal side, that the tribal affiliation on the paternal side that Rachel has to be mirrored in her chassan. That's the pasuk's teaching me. Okay. Tanya, so fine. So Tanya, so I'll say so again. So whether or not we're going to accept, I'll just tell you now, we are not accepting this halacha l'maisa, right? This obviously would be way too complicated on multiple levels. And not only that, it doesn't actually work. While it sounds nice to maintain, right, tribal genealogical symmetry, it's a great phrase, but it doesn't actually do anything halachically, because halacha l'maisa, everything's going to go after the man who she marries anyway. So again, but it's interesting to see when we're working our way through it. So we're not finished yet. So Tanya, b'sibas habein, v'tanya b'sibas habal. Okay, so we'll say last piece of today's daf. So we'll say we have two brises. Now let's take a step back for just a second. So here's what we know. Let's simplify the case a little bit. Instead of talking about a woman inheriting from two different tribes, let's just keep it easy, right? So Rachel is the daughter of Avram and Sarah, and just to keep it very easy, so Rachel now, let's say Avram and Sarah are both from Shevet Reuven. So now again, Rachel inherits from her father. Rachel is the only child; she inherits from her father. So now, what does the Torah say to Rachel? Rachel, you need to marry into your father's tribe. You need to marry someone from Reuven. Now, why? So remember again, the pasuk says that Rachel has to marry within her father's tribe, and the lashon is over here. The lashon is over here. So that tribal property will not move from one tribe to another. Now, remember, this is all being quoted. Rabbi Shmuel and others are quoting this as a proof to what? That a husband inherits his wife, right? What are we concerned about? We're concerned that if Rachel, who now owns property from Shevet Ruvain, marries a guy from Shevet Shimon, and Rachel predeceases her husband, so what's going to happen? Her husband is going to inherit her, and now tribal property that was part of Ruvain now comes to Shimon. So now we say, Rachel, marry in Ruvain, marry in Shevet Ruvain. This way, if you predecease your husband, the property remains in the designated Shevet. The Gemara says, so now remember, we saw that there's another interpretation. What's the other interpretation? A husband doesn't inherit his wife. So if a husband doesn't inherit his wife, so why does the wife have to marry within the same tribe? What's the answer? Because of her son, right? Because a son does inherit his mother. So it's the same issue. If Rachel marries someone from Shevet Shimon, right, and then has a son, her son is going to be part of Shevet Shimon, and Rachel dies, and her son inherits her. The property that Rachel had from Shevet Reuben is now going to be inherited by Shevet Shimon. That's the issue. That's the issue. So the Rebbe says, now we have two brises. Tanya b'sivas haben, Tanya b'sivas habal. One brisa that supports the idea that the concern over here is the son inheriting, and through the son's inheritance, moving the property from one tribe to another, but the husband doesn't inherit. And then another brisa that highlights, no, the husband does inherit. Tanya b'sivas habal. And the other brisa that talks about the idea of a concern that the husband, through inheriting his wife, is going to move the property from one tribe to another. So let's analyze both of these brises. So here we go. Tanya b'sivas haben. So one brisa that talks about the idea that the concern over here is not that a husband doesn't inherit his wife. So yet we tell the wife who inherits tribal property, marry into your own tribe. Marry into the tribe of your father. This way, again, when your son inherits you, he will keep the tribal affiliation of the property. So the Gemara says, listen to this. This way, again, you will not transfer tribal property from one tribe to another tribe. The Torah is talking about over here the transference that occurs through the inheritance of a son. That if Rachel marries someone from Shevet Shimon and they have a son, when Rachel dies, her son's going to inherit her, and her son, who is a card-carrying member of Shimon, is now going to take property from Reuven and move it to Shimon. So you're telling me now that it's talking about, so we'll say talking about the son transferring the property, not the husband. Kishu Omer, maybe it's the husband. Kishu Omer v'lo tisov nachala mimata lemata acher hareyu b'sivas habal Omer. When the pasuk says, do not move the property from one nachala to another nachala, that could be referring to the potential ability of a husband to transfer tribal property. So the Gemara says, ha ma'ani makayim v'lotisov nachala b'nei Yisrael mimata mata b'sivas haben akasav medaber. So what is the pasuk talking about when it says, do not move property from one mata to another mata? That is referring to sibas haben. That is referring ultimately to the ability of a son who inherits to move property from one tribe to another tribe. Fine. So we'll say, if you go ahead, by the way, just to show you what's happening over here, if you talk before you go to the next staff, if you look in the Rashbam, about 7 lines up from the bottom, Tanya b'sivas haben, Tanya b'sivas haben. I should have read this before. So the Rashbam says as follows. He explains, Kilomar, afagav duk minon lahani trei kroi, lo tisov nachal b'nei Yisrael mata mata, lo tisov nachal mata mata acher, tarvai b'sivas haben, u'l'shnei lavi kidiktani, v'omer afilu hachi ashkechon braisos, Demuki lekama b'sibas haben or l'tinyasa b'sibas habal. So I'm sorry, I should have really introduced it with this. What the Rasham is saying is like this. Up until now, what we've been doing is with these psukim, we've assumed that you could interpret them one way or the other. In other words, there's two choices over here. Right? Right? There's two choices in life. So there are two choices over here. Either, what we're saying is like this, either the reason a woman has to go ahead and marry into the same tribe when she inherits tribal property is because her husband inherits her, and therefore he could move property from one tribe to another, right? Or husband doesn't inherit, and her son inherits her, and he could move property from one tribe to another. Now, either way, the net result is the same, which is, we tell the woman, marry within your own tribe, right? So the net result is the same. But what's interesting to note, so now what the Gemara is just introducing us to is, there's a third school of thought, or third school of thought. The third school of thought is that you can agree with both. That both a husband inherits his wife, and obviously a son inherits his wife, and different psukim refer to different dynamics. That's what we just saw over here. Could very well be that one pasuk is talking about that if a wife predeceases her husband, so the husband inherits her, and the husband could go ahead and move tribal property from one tribe to another. Another pasuk is talking about the idea that if the wife marries into a different tribe, her son inherits her, and her son could move tribal property one tribe to another tribe. So again, it's not an either or. That's all that's happening over here. Tanya. We'll stop over here for today. We'll say shkoyach. Tremendous, great day. Shkoyach, everyone. All right, Chevron Zoom, have a wonderful day, everyone. Jerry, I love the sukkah. Gosh, save me a seat. Good morning. I got your message. It's a crazy day. Yeah, I'll call.
But I do need to talk.
Good. I'll call you today, man.
Two things we need to discuss. Right?
Okay, great.
You're going to get me in a lot of trouble if you don't help me.